You're too safe, Lena. I need someone who matches my ambition. Those cutting words, spat with a smirk, shattered Lena Jackson's world as she uncovered her husband Marcus's affair after 9 years of devotion. In their quiet, affluent suburb, where they stood out as the only black couple, Lena's beauty, her long, sleek black hair, masked the pain of betrayal. She chose silence, slipping away into the night with nothing but her mother's cherished paintbrush. A year later, the man who mocked her as a burden would kneel, broken, begging for the woman he had discarded. Lena, now a name whispered in awe, turned her heartbreak into a masterpiece that upended his empire. Her rise is a story of resilience and revelation. Join us. Subscribe and share where you're watching from, day or night. Her triumph will leave you speechless. The dining room glowed with the soft flicker of candles, their flames dancing on the polished mahogany table. Lena Jackson, her long, sleek black hair cascading over her shoulders, adjusted a vase of fresh lilies, their scent weaving through the air like a quiet promise. She wore the emerald green dress Marcus had once called stunning, its fabric hugging her curves with a grace that turned heads in their affluent East Coast suburb. As the only black couple in the neighborhood, Lena and Marcus were a striking pair, her beauty a quiet radiance, his charm a polished blade. Tonight, their 9th wedding anniversary, Lena had crafted perfection. Iron napkins folded into delicate fans, a bottle of Pinot Noir breathing on the counter, and a homemade rosemary roasted lamb cooling in the oven. She checked the clock, 8:17 p.m., and smoothed her dress, her fingers lingering on the hem. Marcus was late, but she told herself it was just work. It always was. The house was silent, save for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. Lena lit the last candle, her reflection shimmering in the window pane, her dark eyes steady but searching. She'd spent the day designing a freelance logo for a local bakery, her creativity a lifeline after pausing her career at a top design firm to support Marcus's tech startup. 9 years of late nights, of tweaking his pitch decks, of selling her beloved easel to fund his first server purchase, it had all been for them, for their dream. She smiled faintly, remembering Marcus's grin when his app secured its first investor. "You're my rock, Lena," he'd said then, his hand warm on hers. The memory felt like a painting she could still touch. The clock ticked to 8:43 p.m. Lena poured herself a glass of water, her movements deliberate, as if stillness could keep the unease at bay. She straightened a fork, then checked her phone. No messages. She scrolled through their old texts, his playful, "miss you already" from a business trip, her reply with a heart emoji. Her thumb hovered over his name, but pride stopped her from calling. He'd come. He always did. She sat, the chair creaking softly, and waited, the lamb's aroma fading as the candles burned low. At 9:12 p.m., her phone buzzed, sharp and sudden, like a crack in glass. Not Marcus, a number she didn't know. Her heart stuttered as she opened the message. A photo loaded slowly. Marcus, his tie loosened, leaning close to a woman with sharp cheekbones and a crimson dress in a dimly lit bar. Her hand rested on his arm, her smile bold, victorious. The caption read, "He's not yours tonight." Lena's breath caught, her fingers tightening around the phone until her knuckles paled. The room seemed to tilt, the lily's scent now cloying, the candles mocking her care. She stared at the photo, at Marcus's easy grin, at the stranger's possessive touch. Simone. She knew the name, his brilliant new colleague, he'd called her, waving off Lena's questions with a laugh. The front door clicked open at 9:37 p.m. Marcus strode in, his tailored suit slightly rumpled, his cologne sharp with a hint of something unfamiliar. Jasmine, not his usual cedar. He tossed his keys into the ceramic bowl by the door, the clink loud in the quiet. "Hey," he said, barely glancing at her as he adjusted his cufflinks in the hall mirror. Lena stood, her emerald dress catching the light, but his eyes didn't linger. She held the phone, the photo still glowing, and forced her voice to stay soft, steady. "Marcus, who's Simone to you?" He froze just for a moment, then turned with a smirk that cut deeper than any words. "You're too safe, Lena," he said, his voice low, almost amused. "I need someone who matches my ambition, not someone stuck in this domestic bubble. The words landed like a slap, cold and deliberate. Lena's chest tightened, but she kept her face calm, her hands steady at her sides. I saw you with her, she said, holding up the phone. The photo filled the space between them, undeniable. Marcus didn't flinch. He stepped closer, his eyes bright with something cruel, something fed by her pain. Simone's a game changer, he said. She gets the stakes in this industry. You're just comfortable. Lena's fingers brushed the edge of the table. The napkins she'd folded now absurd in their precision. Comfortable, she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. I gave up my job for your startup. I sold my easel to keep us afloat. I stayed up nights designing your brand when you couldn't afford a team. Her words trembled, but she refused to let them break. Marcus laughed, a short, sharp sound that echoed off the walls. You think that makes you special? You chose to play small, Lena. I'm building an empire. Simone's the kind of woman who fits in that world. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing her down. Lena's eyes flicked to the lamp, cold now, the candles reduced to wax pools. She thought of the easel she'd sold, the sketches she'd abandoned, the dreams she'd tucked away for him. I trusted you, she said, her voice soft but sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. Marcus shrugged, loosening his tie further. Trust doesn't scale, Lena. You should have known that. She set the phone down, the photo still glowing, and folded her hands to hide their shaking. The room, once a canvas of their shared life, felt like a stage for his betrayal. She didn't scream, didn't cry. She looked at him, at the man she'd loved for 9 years, and saw a stranger. Is this what you want? She asked, her voice steady now, though her heart raced. Marcus leaned against the counter, his smirk unwavering. It's what I need. You can stay in your safe little world. I'm moving on. Lena's gaze drifted to the lilies, their petals curling slightly in the heat. She thought of her mother's paintbrush, tucked in a drawer upstairs, the one thing she'd never let Marcus touch. Silence settled over her, not weak but heavy with resolve. She walked to the hall, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood, and picked up her purse. Marcus watched, his smirk faltering for a split second, as if expecting her to beg. Where are you going? He asked, a hint of curiosity breaking through his arrogance. Out, she said simply, her voice calm as a still lake. She opened the door, the cool night air brushing her skin, and stepped into the darkness. The door clicked shut behind her, a final note in the symphony of their unraveling. Marcus stood alone in the dining room, the candles flickering out, the lamp untouched, unaware that the woman he dismissed was already painting the first stroke of a new life. The dining room, still fragrant with the ghosts of last night's lilies, felt like a stage set for a tragedy. Lena Jackson stood by the kitchen island, her long, sleek black hair pulled into a tight bun, as if order could hold her world together. The emerald dress was gone, replaced by a simple gray sweater and jeans, but her beauty, sharp cheekbones, deep brown eyes, remained a quiet defiance against the ache in her chest. The untouched lamb sat in the fridge, a reminder of Marcus's dismissal, his words still echoing. You're too safe, Lena. She hadn't slept, her mind replaying the photo of Marcus with Simone, her hand possessive on his arm, her smile a blade. The house, once their sanctuary in this affluent East Coast suburb, where they were the only black couple, now felt like a cage. Lena sipped black coffee, its bitterness grounding her. She'd spent the morning staring at the photo, trying to unsee Marcus's easy grin, the way he leaned into Simone. 9 years, her career sidelined, her easel sold, her nights spent refining his startup's brand, reduced to comfortable. She set the mug down, her fingers steady despite the storm inside. She wouldn't confront him again, not yet. She needed the truth in his own words, not his deflections. The clock read 6:42 p.m. Marcus would be home soon, or so she hoped. She straightened a napkin, a reflex from years of making their life flawless, and waited. The doorbell chimed, sharp and intrusive. Lena's stomach tightened. Marcus never rang the bell. She smoothed her sweater and opened the door to find Simone, standing like she owned the threshold. Her crimson blazer hugged her frame, her hair sleek, Her lips painted a bold red. Behind her, Marcus loomed, his suit pristine but his eyes restless, a predator caught mid-hunt. "Lena," he said, his voice smooth but edged. "Simone's here to discuss a project." Simone's smile was a practiced curve, her gaze sweeping over Lena like she was sizing up a rival. "Nice place," Simone said, stepping inside uninvited, her heels clicking on the hardwood. "Cozy." Lena's fingers curled into her palms, but her face remained calm, a mask honed by years of swallowing slights in a neighborhood that watched them too closely. "A project?" she asked, her voice soft but piercing. Marcus tossed his keys into the ceramic bowl, the clink loud in the tense air. "Yeah, a new app launch. Simone's heading marketing." He moved to the island, pouring himself a glass of the Pinot Noir Lena had saved for their anniversary. Simone leaned against the counter, her posture casual but calculated, her perfume, jasmine, sharp and invasive, filling the space. Lena's eyes flicked to the phone on the table, the photo still burned into her mind. "A project," she repeated, her tone steady. "Is that what you were doing last night at the bar?" Marcus froze, the glass halfway to his lips. Simone's smile didn't waver, but her eyes narrowed, a flicker of amusement crossing her face. Marcus set the glass down, his smirk returning, sharper now. "You're too safe, Lena," he said, his voice low, cruel. "I need someone who matches my vision, someone who gets the game." "Simone does." The words cut deeper than the photo, each syllable a betrayal of the nights Lena had spent designing logos, balancing budgets, whispering encouragement when Marcus doubted himself. She stepped closer, her gaze locked on his. "I gave up my job at the design firm for you," she said, her voice quiet but unyielding. "I sold my easel to fund your servers. I built your brand when you had nothing." Marcus laughed, a cold, hollow sound that echoed off the walls. "You think that makes you my equal? You chose to shrink, Lena. I'm building an empire. Simone's the kind of woman who belongs in it." Simone stepped forward, her smile sharp as a blade. "You think you're an artist, Lena, but you're just his shadow," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Marcus needs someone who lights up a room, not someone who folds napkins." She gestured at the table, the anniversary setup still untouched, the candles now cold stubs. Lena's chest tightened, but she didn't flinch. She thought of her mother's paintbrush, the one thing she'd kept from her old life, tucked upstairs in a velvet case. It was her anchor, a reminder of who she'd been before Marcus's dreams consumed hers. "You invited her here," Lena said to Marcus, her voice steady. "To our home, to say this." Marcus shrugged, sipping the wine, his eyes bright with cruelty. "I wanted to be honest. You deserve that much." Simone laughed softly, her hand brushing Marcus's arm, a claim staked in plain sight. "Honesty," Lena echoed, her fingers grazing the edge of the island. "I sold my easel for you. I lied to my sister when she asked if you were good to me. I carried your failures when your first app crashed." Her words hung in the air, each one a brick in the wall she'd built for him. Marcus's smirk faltered, but only for a moment. "You did what you wanted," he said. "Don't pin your choices on me. Simone's different. She pushes me to be bigger." Simone nodded, her eyes gleaming. "Some women lift a man up," she said. "Others just hold him back." Lena's hands shook, but she hid them behind her back. She looked at Marcus, at the man she'd loved for 9 years, and saw only a stranger who fed on her pain. "Do you want a divorce?" Lena asked, her voice plain, no trace of begging. Marcus tilted his head, almost amused. "Yeah," he said, his tone light, as if ordering coffee. "And don't expect much. You didn't build this. I did." Lena's eyes flicked to Simone, who was studying her nails, bored but triumphant. "This is my home," Lena said softly. Simone smirked. "Is it? Looks like a museum to a life nobody wants." Lena took a breath, the air tasting like ash. She walked to the hall, her steps measured, and opened the closet. She pulled out a small suitcase, her mother's paintbrush already in her mind. "Where are you going?" Marcus asked, a hint of surprise breaking through his arrogance. "You'll see," Lena said, her voice calm, a quiet storm gathering. She packed a few clothes, jeans, a sweater, a sketch pad, tucking the paintbrush into a side pocket. Its weight was a promise, a piece of her mother's courage. Marcus watched, his smirk fading as Lena zipped the suitcase. Simone raised an eyebrow. "She'll be back," she said to Marcus, her voice sweet with venom. "They always are." Lena paused at the door, her hand on the knob, her long black hair catching the light one last time. "Goodbye, Marcus," she said, her voice steady, final. She stepped into the night, the cool air brushing her skin like a new canvas. The door clicked shut behind her, and the silence she left was louder than any words. Marcus poured another glass of wine, his hand trembling slightly, while Simone laughed, unaware that Lena's quiet exit was the first stroke of a masterpiece that would unravel them both. The air in Lena Jackson's new studio apartment carried the faint scent of fresh paint and possibility, a stark contrast to the polished elegance of the suburban home she left behind. Tucked in a vibrant arts district of the East Coast city, the apartment was small, a single room with a creaky floor, a narrow bed, and one window facing a mural-splashed alley. Lena's long, sleek black hair fell loose as she unpacked her suitcase, her movements deliberate, each item a choice in her new life. She placed her mother's paintbrush, its wooden handle worn smooth by years of love, on the chipped nightstand. It was her only treasure, a relic of her mother's courage, and it anchored her in this unfamiliar space. The only black couple in their old neighborhood, Lena and Marcus, had been a spectacle. Here, she was just another artist in a sea of dreamers. Lena sat on the bed, the springs groaning softly, and opened a worn notebook. In neat, deliberate script, she wrote 3 lines. Find work, stay quiet, rebuild. She underlined rebuild twice, the pen pressing hard enough to dent the page. The silence of the room wasn't cruel. It was a blank canvas, waiting for her to decide its colors. Last night's betrayal, Marcus's cruel smirk, Simone's venomous words, still burned, but Lena refused to let it define her. She'd walked away from their home with nothing but a suitcase and her mother's paintbrush, choosing silence over screams. Now that silence was her foundation. The city hummed outside, a mix of bus horns and distant laughter. Lena's savings, scraped from years of freelance gigs, had covered the first month's rent and a deposit, but the numbers in her bank app were dwindling. She needed work, fast. She scrolled through job boards on her phone, her thumb pausing over an ad for a part-time barista at a cafe called The Brushstroke, a bohemian spot known for its artist clientele. The pay was modest, but it was a start. She applied, her resume a patchwork of design projects and the years she'd spent propping up Marcus's startup. By noon, she had an interview. The Brushstroke was a riot of color, walls covered in local art, tables mismatched, the air thick with espresso and ambition. Lena arrived early, her hair pulled back, her gray sweater swapped for a crisp white blouse. The owner, Rosa Delgado, a wiry woman with silver-streaked hair and a painter's smudge on her wrist, sized Lena up with warm but sharp eyes. "You're overqualified," Rosa said, scanning Lena's resume. "Why a cafe?" Lena hesitated, then spoke the truth. "I'm starting over. I need something steady while I figure out what's next." Rosa nodded, her gaze softening. "I've been there. Betrayal's a hell of a muse. You start tomorrow." Lena's first shift was a blur of steaming milk and wiping counters, but she found rhythm in the chaos. She memorized orders, smiled at regulars, and sketched napkin doodles during lulls. Rosa noticed plucking one, a swirling abstract of coffee cups, and pinning it to the cafe's corkboard. "You've got an eye," Rosa said, her voice carrying the weight of someone who'd clawed her way back from her own heartbreak. "Ever think about doing more than logos?" Lena's fingers brushed her pocket, where her mother's paintbrush rested in its case. "I used to," she admitted. "I'm learning to again." That evening, Lena enrolled in an online course on creative project management, her laptop balanced on a thrift store table. She watched lectures on budgeting events, curating experiences, and turning ideas into reality. Her mind sparked with possibilities: art galleries, pop-up exhibits, spaces where creativity could breathe. She jotted notes in her notebook, the words flowing like brushstrokes, timelines, vendors, vision. She thought of Marcus, his empire built on her sacrifices, and felt a quiet fire. She wouldn't just survive. She'd create something he could never touch. Rosa, sensing Lena's hunger, offered her a side gig, organizing a small art exhibit for local painters. It's low budget, Rosa warned, but it's a chance to show what you can do. Lena accepted, her heart racing. The exhibit was in 2 weeks, a tight timeline. She spent nights researching affordable lighting, sketching layouts, and sourcing secondhand frames. But 3 days before the event, the lighting vendor canceled, citing a double booking. Panic clawed at Lena's chest. She saw Marcus's smirk, heard Simone's taunt. "You're just his shadow." She pushed the memory down and called Rosa, who answered with a calm, "Fix it. You know how." Lena scoured the arts district, knocking on doors until she found a photographer with spare LED spotlights. She bartered a free logo design for their use, hauling the lights herself in a borrowed cart. The day of the exhibit, she arrived at dawn, her hair tied back, her hands steady as she arranged canvases and adjusted beams. The brushstroke transformed into a gallery, each painting glowing under her careful lighting. Guests arrived, artists, collectors, curious locals, and whispered praise. "This feels alive," one said, studying a vibrant abstract. Rosa hugged Lena at the end, her eyes bright. "You made it sing, kid. They're already asking who you are." Lena walked home under a sky streaked with dusk, her mother's paintbrush in her pocket, its weight a quiet comfort. She'd earned $200 and a handful of business cards from attendees wanting her to organize their events. At her apartment, she opened her notebook and added a new line beneath rebuild. "Make it mine." The city's pulse thrummed outside, and for the first time in days, Lena felt it sync with her own. Marcus and Simone were across town, likely toasting their empire with wine she'd chosen. They didn't know the woman they'd mocked was painting her own world, one stroke at a time, and that her silence was the foundation of a masterpiece they'd never see coming. Lena Jackson's studio apartment, once a bare canvas of survival, now hummed with purpose. Her long, sleek black hair was tied back as she hunched over a secondhand desk, her laptop casting a soft glow on sketches of gallery layouts and color-coded timelines. The arts district outside her window pulsed with life. Graffiti artists tagging walls, musicians busking under streetlights. But inside, Lena was building something new. Her mother's paintbrush sat on the desk, its worn handle a quiet talisman of resilience. The notebook beside it bore her mantra: "Find work, stay quiet, rebuild, make it mine." Each word was a brick in the foundation of Ink and Canvas Studio, her fledgling company dedicated to crafting unforgettable art experiences. In the East Coast city where she and Marcus had once stood out as the only black couple in their pristine suburb, Lena was no longer a spectacle. She was a creator. The success of the brushstroke exhibit had sparked whispers in the arts community. Lena's phone buzzed with inquiries. Small gigs at first, a poet's book launch, a sculptor's pop-up show. She took them all, her days split between pouring coffee at the brushstroke and nights spent planning events with meticulous care. She learned to negotiate with vendors, to stretch budgets without sacrificing beauty, to make a $20 tablecloth look like it belonged in a gallery. Her reputation grew, not with fanfare, but with the quiet weight of perfection. Clients called her the one who makes it effortless, unaware of the hours she spent sketching layouts or sourcing fairy lights from thrift stores. Rosa Delgado, the cafe owner who'd given Lena her first chance, became an unexpected ally. Over coffee one morning, Rosa shared her own story, how she'd rebuilt her life after a partner left her for someone shinier, as she put it. "Art saved me," Rosa said, her silver-streaked hair catching the light. "It's not just what you make, it's how you survive." Her words stuck with Lena, fueling her drive. But it was Mr. Nguyen, a retired creative director with a sharp eye and sharper tongue, who gave her a map to something bigger. He'd seen her work at the brushstroke exhibit and called her to his cluttered office. Walls lined with posters from campaigns he'd shaped. "You've got a gift," he said, sliding a mug of tea across his desk. "Not just for design, but for making people feel something. Don't waste it on small stages." Mr. Ingen's advice was a spark. Art isn't just creation, it's how you survive, he said, his voice steady, his eyes piercing. He taught Lena to think like a strategist, build a brand, curate experiences, choose vendors who valued trust over flash. He gave her a list of contacts, florists, lighting techs, caterers who wouldn't flake. Start small but aim high, he said. Make them talk about you without you saying a word. Lena took his words to heart, registering Ink and Canvas Studio as an LLC. She designed a simple logo, a brushstroke curling into her horizon, and built a one-page website with three promises. We create, we deliver, we make it unforgettable. She crossed out the apologies she'd nearly written into her rate sheet. Her work wasn't cheap. It was worth it. Her next gig was a book launch for a local poet, held in a community center with peeling paint. Lena transformed the space with borrowed tapestries and soft lighting, turning a drab room into a haven of warmth. She hung paper lanterns, each painted with a line from the poet's work, and arranged chairs in a crescent to make the audience feel close. The poet, a shy woman named Clara, hugged Lena after, tears in her eyes. You made my words feel like they mattered, Clara said. Lena smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in months. She tucked Clara's number into her phone under good people, a list growing with each job. But not every step was smooth. A gallery opening nearly derailed when a caterer delivered half the promised food. Lena, her hair pinned up, her hands steady, improvised, slicing fruit into artful displays, charming the guests with her calm. You're a magician, the gallery owner said, slipping her an extra $50. Lena used it to buy a used projector, dreaming of multimedia exhibits. She studied late into the night, learning how to layer soundscapes with visuals, how to time a spotlight to a speaker's crescendo. She memorized flower names, dahlias for boldness, peonies for warmth, and the exact lifespan of ice in a summer heat wave. Each lesson was a brushstroke shaping her vision. Across town, Marcus Jackson's world was fraying. His tech startup, once a darling of investors, stumbled under his reckless spending. He'd leased a sleek office to impress Simone, who demanded champagne lunches and front-row seats at tech conferences. His app's latest update crashed, alienating users, and whispers of his mismanagement reached investors. Simone, ever the opportunist, leaned into his arm at galas, her smile a mask for her calculations. You're slipping, Marcus, she'd murmur, her voice sweet but sharp. Don't make me look bad. Marcus laughed it off, pouring another drink, but his hands shook. He didn't know Lena was building something new, something that would soon cast a shadow over his crumbling empire. Lena's nights ended with her sketching in her notebook, her mother's paintbrush beside her. She drew concepts for exhibits, an immersive show with projected light, a sculpture garden under stars. She wrote reminders. Check audio levels. Smile when they cry. Her phone buzzed with a new inquiry. A small museum wanted her to design an artist retrospective. It was her biggest job yet, and fear flickered in her chest. She thought of Marcus's voice. You chose to shrink. She pushed it away, calling Mr. Nguyen. I'm scared, she admitted. He chuckled, his voice warm through the line. Fear's just the spark before the fire. Use it. Lena nodded, though he couldn't see, and wrote in her notebook. Fear is fuel. She didn't know Marcus's investors were starting to whisper about a new name in the arts. A woman who made every event feel like a masterpiece. Lena was rising, her silence louder than his noise, and the city was beginning to take notice. The gallery hummed with anticipation, its high ceilings and glass walls bathed in the golden glow of carefully angled lights. The East Coast city's most anticipated art event of the season, the Vanguard exhibit, was a kaleidoscope of color and sound. Vibrant canvases, delicate sculptures, and a live string quartet weaving through the air. Lena Jackson, now known as Ms. Harper in the arts community, stood in the shadows of a mezzanine, her long, sleek black hair pinned neatly, her black blazer crisp against her silhouette. Her mother's paintbrush rested in her pocket, a quiet anchor as she scanned the room. Ink and Canvas Studio, her creation, had transformed the space into a living artwork. Every detail, from the peony centerpieces to the synchronized lighting, executed with her signature precision. In this city where she and Marcus had once been the only black couple in their polished suburb, Lena was no longer a curiosity. She was a force. Lena's earpiece crackled softly. "Lighting's at 75%, Ms. Harper," said Javier, her lighting tech, his voice steady. "Perfect," Lena replied, her tone calm but firm. "Hold it there until the keynote." She adjusted her clipboard, her eyes flicking to the schedule. Welcome at 7:30, keynote at 8:01, artist reveal at 8:45. Her team, Javier, Clara the poet-turned-assistant, and a handful of trusted vendors, moved like a well-rehearsed orchestra, invisible yet essential. The exhibit was her biggest yet, a commission from a prestigious arts council, and whispers of her name, Ms. Harper, floated among the guests. Lena's heart raced, but her face remained serene. She'd built this from nothing, from the ashes of Marcus's betrayal, and tonight was proof of her rebirth. Below, the crowd mingled, curators in tailored suits, artists with bold tattoos, collectors clutching champagne flutes. Lena spotted Marcus before he saw her. He entered with Simone on his arm, his suit sharp but his posture tense, a man carrying the weight of a crumbling empire. Simone, radiant in a silver dress, scanned the room with a predator's gaze, her smile practiced but brittle. Marcus's tech startup was bleeding investors, his latest app update a public failure. Lena knew this from whispers in the arts district. Gossip traveled faster than code. He'd come to the Vanguard exhibit to woo back a key investor, unaware that Lena's ink and canvas studio was behind the night's perfection. Lena's fingers brushed the paintbrush in her pocket, grounding her. She remembered Marcus's words. "You chose to shrink." Now, as she orchestrated a room that buzzed with awe, she felt the irony. She stayed out of sight, directing her team from the mezzanine. Clara's voice came through the earpiece. "Caterers running low on canapes. Should I pivot?" Lena's mind raced, but her voice was steady. "Use the fruit trays from the back. Arrange them like the sketches I sent." Clara chuckled. "You're a genius, boss." Lena smiled faintly, her focus unwavering. Marcus, oblivious to her presence, worked the crowd, his laugh too loud, his handshake too eager. "This event's top tier," he said to a collector, his voice carrying. "My team could learn from whoever pulled this off." Simone smirked, sipping her drink. "Probably some overpaid firm," she said, her tone dismissive. Lena overheard through a nearby staffer's earpiece and felt a flicker of satisfaction. They didn't know. No one did. To the guests, Ms. Harper was a mystery, a name whispered with respect, but no face attached. Lena preferred it that way. Her work spoke louder than her pain. A guest, a curator with a silver beard, approached a staffer near Lena's perch. "Who's running this?" he asked, gesturing at the seamless flow of the night. The staffer, trained by Lena, smiled. "Ms. Harper's team. She's everywhere." The curator nodded, impressed. "Tell her I want her for my next show." Lena's chest warmed, but she stayed hidden, her eyes tracking Marcus. He looked thinner, his confidence a fragile mask. Simone clung to his arm, but her glances darted to wealthier men in the crowd, her loyalty as thin as her dress. Lena's phone vibrated, a text from Mr. Nguyen, her mentor. "Heard you're killing it. Stay sharp. They're watching." She typed back, "Always." Mr. Nguyen had warned her about Marcus's presence, his firm one of the competitors for the Arts Council's future contracts. Lena had outbid them, her proposal lean but flawless, her vision vibrant where Marcus's was flashy and hollow. She thought of his betrayal, of Simone's taunt. "You're just his shadow." Tonight she was the light, and they were blind to it. The quartet shifted to a softer melody, signaling the keynote's approach. Lena signaled Javier to dim the lights to 70%, warm but not theatrical. The crowd hushed, drawn to the stage where the council's director would speak. Lena's team moved like ghosts, refilling glasses, adjusting floral arrangements, catching a spilled napkin before it hit the floor. A collector whispered to her friend, "This is the best event I've been to in years." Lena overheard, her lips curving slightly. She thought of her notebook, of fear as fuel, and felt the spark ignite. Marcus, desperate to impress, cornered an investor near a sculpture. "We're pivoting," he said, his voice tight. "Bigger projects, better execution." The investor, a woman with sharp eyes, raised an eyebrow. "Better than this?" she asked, gesturing at the room. Find me whoever did this and I'll talk. Marcus's smile froze. Ms. Harper, the investor added, heard she's the one to watch. Marcus's jaw tightened, and Simone's grip on his arm faltered. Who is she? He muttered, scanning the crowd. Lena watched from above, her heart steady. He was chasing a shadow while she held the stage. As the keynote began, Lena stepped back, her black blazer blending into the mezzanine's darkness. She could have revealed herself, could have walked down and let Marcus see her triumph. But she chose silence, her power in the unseen. The city was hers now, its pulse syncing with her own. Marcus's empire was cracking, and he didn't know the woman he'd called a burden was the architect of his unraveling. Lena's fingers brushed the paintbrush again, a promise to herself. Tonight she was invisible. Tomorrow she'd be undeniable. The Vanguard exhibit glittered under a canopy of stars projected across the gallery's glass ceiling. A masterpiece of light and shadow orchestrated by Lena Jackson's ink and canvas studio. The air thrummed with the hum of a string quartet, the clink of champagne flutes, and the murmurs of awe from the city's art elite. Lena, known only as Ms. Harper, stood in the mezzanine's shadows, her long, sleek black hair cascading over a tailored black dress that hugged her frame with quiet elegance. Her mother's paintbrush rested in a velvet pouch at her waist, a silent partner in her triumph. The room below pulsed with her vision, peony centerpieces glowing under soft spotlights, sculptures framed like jewels, a soundscape that wove music into emotion. In this East Coast city, where she and Marcus had once been the only black couple in their pristine suburb, Lena was no longer a footnote. She was the story. Her earpiece crackled. Keynote's done, Ms. Harper, Clara whispered. Ready for the reveal? Lena's heart quickened, but her voice was steady. Cue the lights at 8:45, centerpiece on my mark. She scanned the crowd, her eyes finding Marcus near a towering abstract sculpture. His suit hung loose, his face gaunt, his smile a fragile mask as he pitched to a bored investor. Simone, resplendent in silver, clung to his arm, her eyes darting to richer prospects. Lena's lips curved faintly. They didn't know she was here. Didn't know Ms. Harper was the woman they'd mocked as a shadow. Tonight that shadow would step into the light. The quartet faded, and the gallery's lights dimmed to a warm amber. The crowd hushed, drawn to the stage where the Arts Council director stood, her voice clear. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's magic is the work of one visionary. Please welcome the heart of this exhibit, Ms. Harper. Murmurs rippled. Who is she? As Lena descended the mezzanine stairs, her heels clicking softly, her black dress catching the light like a canvas. The crowd parted, their eyes following her. A woman whose presence commanded without demanding. Marcus froze, his champagne flute trembling. Simone's smile faltered, her grip on his arm tightening. Lena took the stage, the microphone cool in her hand. Her long hair shimmered, a cascade of black silk framing her steady gaze. Good evening, she said, her voice calm, resonant, carrying the weight of 9 years of sacrifice. I am Lena Harper. Gasp punctuated the silence. Marcus's glass slipped, shattering on the polished floor, the sound sharp as a gunshot. No, he whispered, his face paling. Simone's eyes widened, her lips parting in shock. Lena, she breathed, the name a betrayal of her own confidence. Lena's gaze swept the room, pausing briefly on Marcus, her expression unyielding. Tonight, you've walked through a world I built, she said. Every light, every note, every moment is the work of Ink and Canvas Studio. My vision, my team, my heart. She nodded to Javier, and the gallery's centerpiece, a massive abstract painting, lit up behind her. Swirls of crimson, gold, and midnight blue danced across the canvas, a storm of emotion captured in brushstrokes. At its base, in bold script, glowed her signature, Lena Harper. The crowd erupted in applause, collectors whispering, "She painted that?" This piece, Lena continued, her voice steady but electric, is called Rebirth. It's my story. 9 years ago, I gave everything, my career, my art, my heart, to a man who called me small. Her eyes locked on Marcus, who shrank under her gaze. I sold my easel to fund his dreams. I designed his brand when he had nothing. I carried his failures when he refused to see them. The crowd stirred, heads turning to Marcus, whose face burned red. Simone stepped back, her silver dress no longer a shield. The screens above flickered, showing Lena's sketches. Early logos for Marcus's startup, late-night notes for his pitches, a receipt for her sold easel. I was told I was a burden, Lena said, her voice cutting like glass. But I rebuilt. I learned. I created. This exhibit, this moment is mine. The applause swelled, a thunderous wave. A collector near the front whispered, "She's extraordinary." Another nodded. "Marcus who?" Marcus shoved through the crowd, his voice hoarse. "You're lying," he shouted, his hands shaking. "You can't do this. You're nothing without me." Lena tilted her head, her calm a stark contrast to his desperation. "I was everything," she said softly, "and you threw it away." The screen shifted to photos of her recent work, galleries, book launches, glowing reviews. The crowd gasped again, their respect for Ms. Harper now a tide turning against Marcus. Simone, her composure cracking, slammed her glass on a table. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, her voice shrill. "You were his shadow, Lena. You think this makes you better than us?" Lena's gaze shifted to her, unflinching. "I don't need to be better than you," she said. "I'm better than the woman I was when you mocked me." The crowd murmured, some laughing softly at Simone's unraveling. An investor turned away, muttering, "I'm done with Parker's firm. She's the future." Marcus staggered, his eyes wild. "Lena, you can't—" he began, but the director cut him off, her voice firm. "Mr. Jackson, this is Ms. Harper's night." The applause roared again, drowning his protest. Lena stepped back, her painting glowing behind her, its colors a testament to her survival. Marcus stood frozen, his empire crumbling in the light of her triumph. Simone, her face tight with fury, turned and slipped toward a wealthier guest, already recalculating her next move. Lena handed the microphone back, her mother's paintbrush a steady weight at her side. She didn't need to shout. Her work, her art, her presence spoke louder than Marcus's noise ever could. As she moved off the stage, the crowd's whispers followed her. "Lena Harper. Unbelievable. She owns this." She glanced back once, seeing Marcus alone, his shoulders slumped, his glass shards glinting on the floor. Her silence had built this moment, and now her voice had claimed it. The morning sun spilled through the tall windows of Lena Jackson's new office, a converted loft in the heart of the East Coast city's arts district. Canvases leaned against exposed brick walls, and a sleek desk held her laptop, a vase of peonies and her mother's paintbrush, its worn handle now framed in a small glass case. Lena's long, sleek black hair was pulled into a loose braid, her tailored blazer a testament to the woman she'd become. Ms. Harper is now synonymous with flawless art experiences. Ink and Canvas Studio had grown from a notebook dream to a force, securing contracts for galleries and festivals across the city. The loft buzzed with her team, Clara sketching timelines, Javier testing projectors, a new hire arranging vendor calls. In this space where Lena had once been half of the only black couple in a pristine suburb, she was now a singular star, her light undeniable. Lena reviewed a proposal for a museum retrospective, her pen moving with the precision of an artist. The Vanguard exhibit had cemented her reputation, its centerpiece painting, Rebirth, now a symbol of her triumph. Collectors whispered her name. Curators vied for her vision. She'd bought out a small gallery space last week, her first property, and the deed sat on her desk, a quiet victory. Her phone buzzed with a message from Rosa. "Heard you're the talk of the town. Proud of you, kid." Lena smiled, typing back. "Couldn't have started without you." Her notebook, once a lifeline, now held a new line beneath fear as fuel. "Keep building. Never look back." Across town, Marcus Jackson's world was a shadow of its former shine. His apartment, once a sleek showcase of ambition, was cluttered with unopened bills and empty whiskey bottles. His tech startup had collapsed. Investors fled after the Vanguard exhibit, his app's failures mocked on industry blogs. He sat on a sagging couch, his suit rumpled, his hair uncombed, scrolling through emails labeled urgent, account suspension, and investor withdrawal. Simone had left weeks ago, her departure as swift as her loyalty was thin. She'd been spotted at a tech gala, draped on the arm of a venture capitalist, her silver dress replaced by gold. Marcus's phone held no messages from her, only a void where his empire once stood. He'd heard the whispers, Ms. Harper's rise, her gallery, her name on every curator's lips. The truth had hit him like a freight train at the exhibit. Lena, the woman he'd called a burden, was Ms. Harper. Her painting, her poise, her power had dismantled him in front of the city's elite. He'd replayed her words, I was everything and you threw it away, until they burned. Desperate, he'd traced her office through a vendor's slip, a crumpled business card for ink and canvas studio. Now he stood outside her loft, his hands trembling, his pride a tattered rag. He needed her forgiveness, her help, anything to claw back from the abyss. Lena was reviewing a lighting plan when the intercom buzzed. Someone's here, Clara said, her voice wary. Says his name's Marcus. Lena's pen paused, her heart steady but her eyes sharp. Let him in, she said, her tone calm as glass. Marcus entered, his once confident stride now hesitant, his eyes bloodshot. The loft's vibrancy seemed to mock him. Lena's sketches on the walls, her team's quiet efficiency. She stood, her braid catching the light, her presence commanding without effort. Marcus, she said, her voice even, no trace of the pain he'd caused. He stepped forward, his hands clasped like a supplicant. Lena, he croaked, his voice raw. I was wrong. I was blind. You were everything. His knees buckled, and he sank to the floor, his head bowed. I mocked you, hurt you, but I see it now. You're all I ever needed. Please, forgive me. Take me back. I'll change. His sobs echoed, a broken man unraveling in her sanctuary. Clara and Javier exchanged glances, but Lena's face remained stone, her eyes steady as they met his. The room was silent, save for Marcus's ragged breaths. Lena's fingers brushed the glass case holding her mother's paintbrush, a reminder of the woman she'd rebuilt. You called me small, she said softly, her voice carrying a quiet blade. You said I was a burden when I sold my easel for your servers, when I designed your brand, when I carried your failures. Marcus flinched, his hands reaching for her hem, but she stepped back, untouchable. I begged you to see me, she continued, and you laughed. Now when I've built this without you, you beg? The loft's windows framed the city, its skyline a testament to her rise. Marcus's sobs grew louder. I'm nothing without you, he whispered, his face wet, his suit stained with dust. Please, Lena, save me. The words hung, pitiful in the air. Lena's gaze didn't waver. I already saved myself, she said, her voice cold, clear. I lived without you, Marcus, and I lived better. She turned to Clara, handing her the lighting plan. Finalize this by noon, she said, her tone professional, dismissing Marcus's presence like a stray shadow. Marcus staggered to his feet, his eyes searching for a crack in her resolve. Lena, please, he said, his voice breaking. I can't do this alone. She looked at him, her mother's paintbrush a steady weight at her side. You chose alone when you chose her, she said. Now live with it. She walked to the door, holding it open, her posture unyielding. Marcus stumbled out, his shoulders hunched, the city's hum swallowing his defeat. Lena closed the door, the click final. She returned to her desk, her team resuming their work as if nothing had happened. The city outside buzzed with her name, Ms. Harper, the woman who turned heartbreak into art. Ink and Canvas Studio now owned a gallery, with contracts piling up, each one a brushstroke in her legacy. She opened her notebook, her pen steady, and wrote, Keep building, never look back. The paintbrush gleamed in its case, a symbol of her mother's courage, her own resilience. Marcus was gone, his empire dust, while Lena's star burned brighter than ever. She stepped to the window, the city stretching wide before her, and whispered to herself, You said I was nothing. Now I'm everything you can't touch. Lena's journey from betrayal to brilliance shows us that resilience can paint a masterpiece from pain. Her story is a beacon, inspiring us to rise above heartbreak and reclaim our power. Thank you for joining us in this tale of triumph. Your presence keeps these stories alive. Please share your thoughts in the comments. How did Lena's courage touch you? Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Your voices fuel our mission to share stories that matter. Subscribe to never miss a moment of inspiration, and we'll meet again soon for another tale of strength and redemption.